It's the Tea of Doom. I don't remember what I said in my original video of this thing when I picked it up. If I said I'd do a follow-up video or not, but I think I planned on it. Even though the weather may or may not be totally conducive to it today. We're going to try it, and if I can move Plastic Fantastic back there out of the way, we may even drive it a little bit. But I think I'm working on year 3 of having this. And even though it's far more of a computer on wheels than I really would have liked, I can't say as though it's been a bad investment. This is, for those of you just tuning in, a 2021 model year Toyota Corolla SE in what they call the Blue Crush paint scheme, which I wouldn't say is uncommon, but it's certainly not the most common paint scheme that you find when you find a Toyota Corolla, or really any car for that matter. It's almost always in the silver. This is a 2020 model year. Belongs to my brother. He doesn't really drive it much. It's actually got about a third of the mileage. Would you call it mileage if it's in kilometers? But I'm going to call it mileage. It's got about a third of the mileage as mine does. And he's had it for almost a year longer than I have. It's also had a lot more problems. Both key fobs died and had to have the batteries replaced. And the car battery also had to be replaced because he let the battery run down by leaving the lights on once, and when you do that, that's pretty much game over for your battery. This thing, on the other hand, has been basically entirely fault-free for me, other than a few minor things. Well, one, I was in a collision with this, not of my own fault. Wow, the snow is really going nuts out here. I don't think it was supposed to snow this much today, but hopefully that dies down, because I do kind of have some things I want to do today. Anyway, wasn't an incident. I got sideswiped by somebody who wasn't paying attention and tried to merge into the lane that I was in. And I may or may not actually edit that video at some point, because I did take some video of it. I'd love to know when this particular indignity happened. But that doesn't really go back in. I have to speak to the body shop about that. That's really annoying. Because I'm pretty sure it may be related to that incident. They may just have not fixed it completely. But I'm pretty sure that it was fine. I don't know, I could have scraped it on the end of this driveway that you can barely see because the city hasn't bothered to actually fix it. I think it's their responsibility to fix it, but there is enough, at least on the side where my mother's car is over there, there's enough of a drop that you could take the bumper off of a car pretty easily with it. Head on inside here, at least a little bit out of the snow, and you can see it is a little bit of a cramped driver's area. It's not really designed for somebody who is, shall we say, the only shape they're in is round, although that's certainly the only shape I'm in. But yeah, it's not terrible. I actually have the seat up pretty far too, so it goes back pretty far. There is, I would say there's more legroom in this than there is in a typical modern vehicle, and these seats, while they're still not a Mercury Grand Marquis level of comfort, I would consider them far better than the modern car seats anyway. Certainly better than what you would get in the LE. Which, if you can barely see it, sitting over there, is what that is. Like I said, this is an SE. So this is the Sport Edition. But that doesn't really mean much to anybody else. I wish I'd written it down. And maybe I could actually find it somewhere. But this is an SE with some upgraded features. But again, I don't remember exactly what they are. I do know that it brings it a little bit closer to the XSE specification. It has your typical cluster of controls that you've come to expect out of basically anything. Power locks, power windows, power mirrors, side mirrors there. Window lockout if you've got children riding with you or adults who think that they're children. You can lock out the windows. Of course, each door has its own window control, but it's a pretty standard setup there. There's a speaker down there in the door. This does not have HVAC in the back. I think if you got the XSE, there would be some vents in the center console at the back there. But I'm not 100% sure. Also, I think if you got the XSE, there'd be more USB ports. Because yes, this is a modern car and it's got a bunch of USB ports. Here's your instrument panel lights. I have it set to automatic right now because that actually works. Automatic high beams, which is a feature I don't use and I wish people wouldn't use because it doesn't actually work. I believe if I had a trunk popper, or more than just the trunk popper that's on the floor there, it would be here. Heated steering wheel, which some people find pretentious, but is absolutely the business, especially when it gets down to minus 30 degrees. And this, I believe, if I remember correctly, and if I remember reading the book correctly, is a power defroster for the front window. But again, it's not something that I've ever actually used. And then there's two more blanks there for features that this car does not have either. Typical HVAC, nothing real special about that. It does have automatic climate controls. They work for the air conditioning in the summer. I cannot say that they work for the heat. I always just keep the heat turned all the way up. I keep the fan turned all the way up. It's probably not good for it, but I find that it actually works a lot better that way. The defroster works marvels. In fact, hello Handycam, I've actually found that I could, provided there's not too much ice and snow on it, I could turn the defroster on, let the car warm up, and by the time I'm ready to leave, once the car has warmed up, the window will be completely cleared. It's pretty nice. Yes, it's got a touchscreen radio. No, I don't particularly care for it. I don't use the Sirius XM crappy junk that this has got. And there is only, as far as I know, there is only one HD radio station in this area. And it's not a station that I happen to listen to on a regular basis because they play, well, a lot of crap. And no, I don't mean country rap. It's an adult contemporary station. A lot of the stuff that they play is a little bit outside of my realm of taste. You can see it's got a lot of fingerprints. I have gotten good at being able to operate this thing without looking at it. Which, again, I think these things are really good for nothing but distractions and crashing into other motorists on the road. It does have heated seats, and they're heated cloth seats, which is good. I hate leather seats in cars. They do nothing but scald your legs, and then your feet stick to them. That's it. That's all they're good for. Even in the Mercury Grand Marquis, which I would consider to have some of the most tolerable leather seats. I guess they're vinyl, they're not real leather, but I tend to lump those two things into the same category because they're basically the same thing. I don't like them. I really would much prefer to have cloth seats. And heated cloth seats apparently are quite a rarity, at least if you have older vehicles. And yes, because this is a modern car, it has a wireless charging pad. I believe you're supposed to pronounce that she, which is the protocol that it uses, and it does actually work. Although with my phone, I have to actually take it out of the case in order for it to work, which is a little annoying. That's what that power switch right there is for. Another thing a lot of people love to complain about on modern cars happens to be the steering wheel controls, and there's certainly a plethora of those, including the cruise control in a completely inappropriate location. I would much prefer that to be on the turn signal stock here where it belongs. But I don't really use cruise control anyway, so I don't really care that it's there. This does have lane departure warning. I'd turn that off because if you know how to drive, you don't need it. It's also got front collision warning, which again, this is another one of those things where if you know how to drive, you don't need it, and I have not needed it very much, but one thing that I have found in this city is that there's a lot of people who really, for whatever reason or another, don't pay attention, and they slam on their brakes in front of you when they are going 60 kilometers an hour. So that's actually kind of helpful. And of course, there's your usual hands-free controls. I don't even use the volume control, honestly, but I just leave the volume on the radio set in one static location. Even though I change stations, the fortunate thing around these parts is that most radio stations have their audio levels set close to the same. I'm glad to see that even though this does have an LCD screen for a driver information center, that we do have some actual, honest-to-goodness meters here. Of course, you got your speedometer, gas gauge, which again, I don't actually really tend to look at because it gives me a gas range on the information center, which we'll take a look at when we start the car later. And of course, this does have a trip odometer, which that's what the button there is for, which is nice to see that it's not some stupid steering wheel control as well. The stalks on the side here, the columns, are pretty standard stuff. At least I find that they're pretty standard stuff. You got your headlights here, and your turn signal here, as well as your windshield wiper. That is, as far as I'm concerned, right and proper. Although, like I said, I would like to see the cruise control on the turn signal stalk over here, which is where it belongs. But again, that's basically right where it is. A lot of people like to have their headlight control. They'd rather it be down here. I think that, again, that's a distraction. It should be right here, where you don't have to really take your eyes off the road in order to use it. Of course, honestly, you really should know how to use it without taking your eyes off the road, but it seems like a lot of people don't. So having it here is certainly better than having it way down here, where you're looking at this and then you crash into the car that's in front of you because they slammed on their brakes going 60 kilometers an hour. This is a push-button start vehicle. I don't think you can actually get a vehicle these days that does not have a push-button start, other than maybe some of the heavier-duty trucks or the commercial cube vans or things like that. I don't know how I really feel about that. I could go either way. I don't really care too much. It does make it a little bit easier once you break into the car to actually start the car, but, you know, that's what this thing's for. But my real gripe with this is that there's nowhere really to put your keys. It seems to me that when they were inventing the keyless start, they really wanted you to either put the keys in your pocket or in your purse. And to borrow a phrase from V. Westlife, I am not gay enough to be able to pull off carrying a purse, so that's out of the question. Not even a satchel, for crying out loud. It's bad enough that I carry a lunchbox. And having things in my pocket when I am driving is a distraction to me. So what I find that I do is I most often just put it in the cup holder, which, yes, uses up a cup holder, but I don't really bring drinks with me in the car most of the time anyway either, because that's just an opportunity to have spillage and make a mess. And even if I did, I'm only one person. I very rarely have a passenger, so it doesn't really matter too much to me. But yeah, I could go either way on this push-button start thing. I don't find that I've ever really missed having a regular key. It really doesn't matter to me. I suppose it might make it harder to start a vehicle that doesn't really want to start. You can't sit there and hit the starter like you would in a key-operated vehicle. Alright, I think I mentioned USB ports. There's one down there, which actually interfaces directly with the head unit here. And here in this, I call it a glove box, but that's not actually what it is. There is one more, and if I really wanted to, there is a 12-volt connection there. I have one sitting around here somewhere, a cigarette lighter style connection that can adapt to USB ports. Of course, I don't know if I'd really trust that, because most of those just have capacitive droppers, and I don't really like those. This USB here is actually going to my dash cam that's up here. I'm thinking about putting a USB hub in there because it's not in here right now because I need to put new batteries in it, but I have a cassette Walkman, really cheap one. Remember that Studebaker thing? Yeah, I've got that along with an FM transmitter that I use to play cassettes in the car because, yes, I am one of those weirdos who makes mixtapes and plays them in the car. This doesn't really give you a whole lot of room, I find. You know, what ends up happening is this. So I'll have to find a better place for that. I have this extra case in here because I was trying to see if this would actually work better for the charging down here. And as it turns out, it really doesn't, so that can come out of here. This does have an electronic parking brake. That's another feature I really don't like too much because in the face of an emergency, that makes it a lot more difficult to actually use. Here, of course, is the transmission shifter. You'll notice that this is maybe a fancier, I guess you'd call it a fancier transmission, in that it's got your usual range of gears, but it's also got the manual mode, which allows you to manually shift, almost like you're driving a standard transmission without the clutch pedal. I find that this thing does still employ a very weird shifting pattern. Basically, the reason why that's there is for people who want to drive standard, but who don't actually know how to drive standard. I know how to drive standard, so I could have ordered this with a standard transmission if I really wanted to, but this was a pre-built vehicle. It basically had all the features that I wanted, and I absolutely despise driving a standard transmission in city traffic. You know, I value my left leg, thank you very much. I don't want to be having to operate the clutch pedal more times than you would operate the accelerator in a vehicle. Because this is the sport mode, the sport model, it has a sport mode on the transmission, which changes the shifting pattern a little bit. And of course, there is the traction control off. In a lot of vehicles, I turn the traction control off as a matter of course. In this one, I leave it on because, well, unless I absolutely need to turn it off, because it actually works in this particular car, which, again, this is something of an oddity. Most of the time, I find it just kills your accelerator and makes you come to a complete halt, and then you get stuck. My windows are starting to fog up because I'm talking too much in here, so I'm probably going to have to start moving soon, or at the very least get out of here. One thing I did not show in this vehicle in the first video is under hood. Take a look at what's going on under there. It's very simple. You just pop that. There's a little indication here. It tells you which doors are open. And it's now told me that the hood is open. So let's go outside, back into the snow here, and the sun, which is now out. And take a look under hood. Here is a look under hood, and there's a lot less plastic coverings on this than you would see in a typical modern vehicle. I'm kind of amazed at how much you can actually see here. This is your radiator reservoir. I suppose that's actually the only place where you can fill the radiator. It does not look like there is any other accessible caps, unless there happens to be something underneath this, right here, but I don't think there is. Of course, if you're trying to figure out how to operate this on your own, it's pretty easy. When you pump the hood, there's this little lever here that you gotta reach underneath and just push to the side, and then you can lift it all the way up. Of course, there's a warning there. Don't stick anything into the fan. In the case of this, it's an electronically operated fan. It's not clutch operated, which is good. I know that a lot of people prefer clutch operated fans, and there are certainly reasons for doing so, but at least in the case of this, it makes it a lot easier to start the vehicle and run the vehicle when it's cold, as opposed to a clutch-driven fan. Washer fluid fill is here. That's really the only thing I've ever done to this, personally, because I can get my services done for free for the first 5 years at the dealership, so they've done pretty much everything else. There's a couple of electrical things there. I suppose this is for the air conditioning. And there, of course, is the engine. It's got the air conditioning compressor on it, serpentine belt, idler, all kinds of things like that. Pretty typical. Batteries back here. I've never cleaned under hood. I've never had to, or had any real reason to. Maybe I should. That, I assume, is for the brake. Right there. Here's the engine oil dipstick. Right there, and I'm guessing that this is probably the filler. Yeah, it says engine oil on it, so yeah, that's the filler right there. Nice and accessible, so that's pretty neat. This is a 4-cylinder engine. I think pretty much everything these days is a 4-cylinder engine. You can see there are the 4 spark plugs right there. It's an inline 4. And This is not turbocharged. I know that a lot of sports cars are turbocharged, but this one's not. The only difference between this and the LE over there happens to be the shift pattern of the transmission. Gets a little bit more performance out of the vehicle at the expense of some of your fuel mileage, but I haven't really noticed too much of a difference, so I don't really care that much. Of course, it's worth noting that the engine oil that this does use is a weird viscosity, sort of an off viscosity, but I think that's standard these days anyway as well. Of course, here is some information about the PAG oil and the refrigerant used in this system for the air conditioning. I opened the fuel filler door so I could show you something very odd about this. No, it's not the fact that you're only supposed to tighten this until you hear one click, which again I think is pretty normal for the evaporative emissions control on modern vehicles, but it's the fact that you couldn't actually use E85 in this. I would have thought in this day and age, with things being the way that they are with respect to, well, environmental safety and things like that, environmental protection, that any vehicle would support ethanol 85, but not this one. Be kind of interesting to see if the LE version of the car has that same warning on it. Of course, it's not my vehicle, which is why I'm not playing around with it. The trunk is spacious enough. I mean, again, it's not a Mercury Grand Marquis trunk or anything like that, so you couldn't put a chest freezer in here, but I've loaded this thing up with computers, and I think I've managed to get 8, maybe even 9 computers in the back of this, so that's generally not too bad in my books for the trunk on a typical sedan. But I'm going to go ahead and clean all this stuff off, and then I'm going to move Plastic Fantastic over here out of the way, which is mostly a joke because, I mean, it's not a Saturn, so it's not totally made of plastic, but this car is really just kind of a piece of junk in comparison. I mean, to its credit, it does have almost 125,000 kilometers on it, but the most recent thing that it's done is it started leaking coolant, so I'm sure that's going to have to be addressed sooner rather than later. My father did finally get the brakes addressed on this, so at least the brakes kind of work. Versus before, where they really didn't. It was more of a suggestion than anything else, but yeah. Now it's decided to start leaking coolant. Oh, and the parking brake sticks, which is great, because you have to use the parking brake because the parking pin of the transmission is completely gone. So it will roll down the driveway if you don't set the parking brake. Fun stuff. What it's complaining about there, by the way, is the fact that I have my keys not in the car. It's not really the point of the video, but I know that a lot of people like car start videos, so we'll go ahead and we'll fire up this thing for you. If you're wondering what it is, it's a 2015 Hyundai Elantra. Exactly which kind it is, I'm not sure. I don't think it's the sport model, but it might be. It might be the GT. But again, I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't really matter that much. It's kind of clapped out at this point. Doesn't start very good. but at least it does still start. I'd also like to correct myself. This has almost 141,000 kilometers on it. Look at that. Like I said, defroster makes it absolute child's play. Not that there was much to really do. Works far better than that thing does, but again, maybe I'm selling it a little short because it does have almost 141,000 kilometers on it. And typically, that kind of vehicle probably doesn't even make it to 100,000 because people trade it off before then. Let me clean up those books, and then we'll get on our way here. Alright, windshield wipers seem to work pretty good. Probably take the front defroster off. I don't think I really need it, even though I do leave it on there in order to help with this. As far as my car is concerned, 34,505 kilometers on it. Of course, there's the distance to empty. I don't ever touch this, but there are a bunch of different options. I don't really understand what the point of that is, but it's there, I guess. There, of course, is your music, trip information, some vehicle settings, and of course any messages that you would potentially be interested in, such as your windshield wiper fluid being low, or potentially if your front collision is not working because there's so much ice on the front of your vehicle that it's blocking the sensor. This is how I leave the radio. Again, it's pretty easy to just operate this on its own, although we'll go ahead and we'll just turn on the radio here. I just leave it at the same thing. I got a couple of presets. That right there is where I have the transmitter for the cassette deck, and of course it's got XM on it. Lots of presets. 30 of them. 36 different presets you could have on this. I think it's a little pretentious, but anyway, put it back where it was, and I'm going to turn it off because obviously I don't want my video muted. Take a look at this garage door as it's going down. Look how unbelievably scungy and rotten that looks. I guess we're going to be replacing it at some point here. So I want to get started with this. I'm going to take my phone out of my pocket so that way it's not there driving me insane. Put seatbelt on. Shift into reverse. A lot of people will use the rear backup camera, and I suppose you could do that. I do use it to make sure that I'm in parking spots, but I don't really use it for anything else. If you know how to drive, you should need to use a rear parking camera. Sorry, a rear backup camera. I'm stuck right now. I should be moving. There's so much ice here. And snow. I brought a shovel because I have a feeling I'm going to be digging out my parking spot the other place, which is where I'm headed. Taking this slow and steady. I will say this. This car does have a CVT transmission in it. And I know that a lot of people don't like CVT transmissions. I'm kind of on the fence about them. I would prefer a regular automatic transmission, but I don't think there's much in the way of cars that mere mortals can get with a regular automatic transmission. Pickup trucks certainly still come with them. Just get an idea for how this thing handles on the road. Maybe you see some stupid drivers along the way, but hopefully not. Hopefully not too many of those. Oh, there's somebody who doesn't really know what a turn signal is, and here's somebody changing their mind. It's warmed up pretty nicely. I know some people love to put cardboard in the front of their car in order to help it warm up. I don't know if you could even really do that on something like this. The front grille is kind of a weird arrangement. Kind of makes it a little bit difficult to do, but you could still do it. I don't know if it would really help. It's not something that you really need to do on a vehicle like this because, again, it's got an electronic fan. Really, that kind of thing, I think, was more useful for clutch-driven fans. to help keep the heat inside the vehicle rather than pulling cold air in from the outside all the time. Take it on a little bit of open road here. You get an idea for the bark that you get. If this were the LE, the shift points would be a lot different, and you would not get nearly the kind of torque out of it, and you wouldn't have that bark to it, basically. Although I think you can, and I know I'm pretty sure my bother has before while I've been in the car, revved it up pretty high. And it handles fairly well. It's mostly true. The bumps in the road, because we cannot keep roads clean or clear of potholes. There's some moron who apparently is in a rush. Honda Civic, what a surprise. They cannot keep these roads free of potholes. So the potholes tend to affect how straight your driving is, but I could take my hand off of the wheel here, which I've done, and we're mostly going straight. I'm going 100. Hope there's no police officers down here. They love to hide down here, which is annoying. It's low-hanging fruit, but what are you going to do? Tell them they can't do it? To quote UXW Bill. That might even be a direct quote, too. I have way too much memory for those kinds of things, but yet I can't remember that I need to take my pile of hard drives that's sitting in the garage into work to be recycled. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. Because I gotta watch myself. I tend to talk like a longshoreman when I'm driving, especially on my own. And even when people like my mother are in here. You know the common phrase, "Do you kiss your mother with that mouth?" Well, where do you think I learned it from? But all in all, my opinion of this vehicle is that when it comes down to modern cars, it's about what you expect. I don't think I made a bad investment buying this. It maybe would have been a little bit nice to get the added fuel economy of the LE versus the SE, but again, this is the vehicle that had all the options that I wanted, and even though it's probably a little stupid, this was the vehicle that wasn't in a dumb paint color, like silver or white or black. I will never understand why you cannot get a car in any color other than silver, white, or black, or gray. Everything else is an extra cost option, if you can even get it at all, or a custom color, which again is an extra cost option. I think it's kind of a farce, really. Doesn't cost a whole lot to paint vehicles, but I guess only having a select number of colors makes it a lot easier to mass manufacture them. I don't know. I'll never understand why people do that. They wait until the last possible minute to merge into another lane, and they back up traffic while they're doing it. All it does is make people angry. The Corolla, as far as I am aware, and this is probably the same thing for pretty much all of Toyota's lineup except for the pickup trucks, is only aware with what I think is a 6-speed or maybe a 5-speed manual transmission or a CVT. You cannot get them with a regular automatic transmission, which is a little disappointing. Because again, I would have liked to have a regular automatic transmission, but I suppose a CVT makes more sense in a sports car like this. Oh, it smells like a gas leak. That's wonderful. And it rides pretty firm. It's not like a Jeep or anything like that, but it certainly rides firm. I think pretty much all vehicles are like that. I like these seats a lot more than I like the seats in the LE model. And again, they're blessedly free of such stupidities as fake leather. really can't stand that. So like I said, all that happens with those is your legs stick to it and it rips your skin off. Summer or winter. Go ahead and clean the window here. Again, there's ice on the wiper. I should probably clean the wiper off before I really go hog heaven with trying to clean it. My headlights just turned on. I have my headlights set to automatic. Again, it's something that actually works on this car. I know on a lot of earlier vehicles, the ones that were among the first to be equipped with automatic headlights, the automatic headlights did not work basically at all. But there we go. Pretty much good to go. We are ready to do what I need to do, and I will come back and finish this video. There, by the way, are the fuel economy numbers. That's not really all that great, but it's pretty typical for city driving. I've been able to get this thing, when I get onto the highway on my trip to work, I've been able to get this thing down to about 6.7. I think it's about the best I've been able to manage in this, and I don't think that's all too bad considering this is a sports car with performance shifting. No turbocharger here. One less thing to fail, I guess. One thing I will note, again, just like other modern vehicles, is that this has keyless entry. It does have the key lock, but all you have to do is take your hand, as long as you got the key with you, and stick it in the handle and the car automatically unlocks. And if you keep holding it, it will unlock all the doors. And of course, just hold it there, it locks them all. I'm sure someone's going to complain about the wind noise. Why is it telling me? Someone will complain about the wind noise because all the fans are running. There's not much I can do. I kind of do like the fact that my car is warm. Very, very much enjoyed feature. You'll also, hopefully, maybe, provided you can hear it over the vents. Turn that down a little bit. You can get an idea for the road noise. Of course, again, I've got snow tires on. That I think that tends to make a little bit more noise, at least in my experience. When we're at a dead stop, though, you almost can't even tell the car's running. It's the way that it should be. Look at that wind. I don't know if you could actually even see it. Wow. Make sure I'm not going to get schmucked by somebody. And let's go out on the big road. This on-ramp is a little stupid. That wind is a little nuts. I think it's only technically 90 along this stretch of road right now because of the construction. getting off here, I'd pass this idiot. In fact, I think I'm going to pass this idiot anyway. Driving with friggin' snow all over the top of this car. Oh, that's paid parking now. Huh. Or no, it's not. That's EV. Kind of surprising that they'd actually install it there. Oh, geez. Well, that's good. They didn't make this wide enough. Watch the camera go flying. But yeah, you get an idea for driving. I got somebody who doesn't know where they're going now. They're stopping at every stop. Idiots. Get a map. That's my mother. She wants me home, so little does she know that I'm almost home. There is just a little video of this 2021 model year Toyota Corolla SE CVT. I guess it's important to note that because it doesn't have the manual transmission. And what I think of it. I think it's probably the best thing for what I do and for the amount of driving that I do. It's certainly the best in terms of fuel mileage. It gets better fuel economy than a lot of the things that I would have been looking at, but as far as comfort and all that, I think I'd definitely prefer something like a Mercury Grand Marquis over a modern vehicle like that with all of its touchscreen, computerized, everything else. Although Mercuries tend to have electronic climate control as well. But either way, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, you can go ahead and feel free to leave them down below. But I'm not really interested in starting the vehicle manufacturer wars, if you can really call it that. This is what I've got. This is what I drive. I don't really have any brand preference. They all suck in their own special ways. And that's that.